If you watch my video reviews, you know that recently I came to appreciate games published by Dark City Games, a publisher that publishes pre-programmed paragraph-based adventures that can be played as RPGs with a group of players, or can be played in solitaire by a single player as a sort of choose-your-adventure book with a more sophisticated combat system than the old choose-your-adventure books, that is, with a combat system that has more of a tactical feel to it. And this is definitely a labor of love, an exercise in nostalgia, because the idea of these adventures is to recapture the feel of those old games. And not by chance, the system of the games published by Dark City Games is inspired by and compatible with the old Wizard and Melee systems. Anyways, recently I played one of their adventures, which is the Dark Vale. This is part of the Legends of the Ancient World series. I already played 2 games in this series, and it is the fantasy universe of Dark City Games. They also have other series set in other types of universes. In this adventure, your party of heroes is embarking on a true scavenger's hunt, meaning that you are looking for an ancient mysterious object, this mysterious black stone that is rumored to be hidden somewhere in the Dark Vale, but at the same time you are running against time because there are other parties of heroes that have heard the same rumors that you have, and they are also looking for the stone. So sometimes you talk to people in the Dark Vale and they're like, oh, you too? Again? Other people looking for it? I really had the impression of this sort of like big competition, big sport that people are trying, in which people are trying to excel, and you are one of the teams participating to this big competition. Of course, there are also other things at stake, especially because there's a lot of danger to be faced in the Dark Vale, and not only that, the Blackstone is this mysterious object of unknown power. In fact, you're looking for it, but it is even unclear what you should do with it once you find it. Should you keep it? Should you use the power? Should you destroy the Blackstone? The adventure will give you clues as you progress in your adventure. You should also try to figure out indeed what the most appropriate course of action is going to be once you find the Blackstone. And as your adventure progresses, you will collect clues about this, about the location of the Blackstone, and things like that. Anyways, this is the general idea. Now I'm going to show you the components of the game, and then I'm going to share with you my general impressions about gameplay. Speaking about the components, let's have a look at the counters, some of which will represent your heroes, but the majority of the counters will indicate enemies that you will encounter on your way, and there is an interesting selection of different types of opponents. You have anthropomorphic goats, skeletons, bandits, snake man, oversized worms, and again a selection of other types of annoyances that will be on your way and you will have to fight them. Then of course you have the map where combat will take place and where combat will be resolved. It is a pretty busy looking map, and of course again you will use the map in different ways depending on the instructions on the rulebook. Some encounters will tell you to imagine all hexes blank, terrain printed on the map has no effect. Some of the times these hexes here containing these circles will indicate columns, and in many other cases, as you can imagine, actually this map represents a forest. So these are trees, and these hexes here are impassable and also block line of sight. That means that actually this map offers interesting tactical possibilities. There may be encounters in which the opponent is using ranged weapons, and then you can try to sneak past the opponent. As the opponent is firing at you, you can try to run from blind spot to blind spot and get them close enough to launch a range attack. Maybe all this is happening while some other characters of your party, characters that have range attacks, are moving in other directions and try to use range attacks against the opponent. I just found myself coming up with more creative tactical solutions in this map that I did in the previous game, Gates to the Underworld. So I really like the opportunities that this map offers. Then you have the book, the adventure book, with a nice, pretty atmospheric, very thematic illustration on the cover, the rules of the series, and then the rules for this adventure. So you don't need to buy or print anything else. The rule book and this product in general contain everything you need to play the game. Here you also have a time limit. As I said, there are also other parties that are looking for the Blackstone. At the end of the third week, so you have to keep track of time, you roll 1d6. On a 1, another party has found the Blackstone. Basically, ill will flow out from the Dark Vale to grip the Sea Reach and even further, and you lose the game. So you have a time limit starting from the third week, the end of the third week. You have to roll every day, and if you roll a 1, you lose the game. So, well, better for you to be quick. The adventure goes up to paragraph number 300, but it does not have 300 paragraphs, meaning that some paragraphs are skipped, and I don't know exactly why. Look at this, for example, 266, 269, 270, but then 273. This is not a flaw because then the connections from paragraph to paragraph are still correct. It never happened to me that I had a connection that led me to non-existing paragraphs. So I think it is meant. I just do not know exactly why it is that way, but it is not a problem in terms of gameplay. Very interesting. This adventure gives you a map of the region that you will be exploring. You start with this map at the beginning of the game. You start your adventure here, and then you move in this area here, and you're searching for the clues that you need in order to find the Blackstone. I really like the idea of the map. First, it is thematically more interesting. It helps in creating the atmosphere, and then also the first time that I played that game, Gates to the Underworld, in any case, I was drawing my own map. I was drawing pretty much this, just to make sure that I was not overlooking any area, that I was searching pretty much, well, everything, everywhere that I could, or in any case, that I had a good grasp of where things were, and where things that I did not know yet were located. So having this map here just saved me that part of the work. It was already done. So really good. I really like this, and I hope to find more maps in other adventures in the series. The adventure is traditional in a certain sense. You have a main quest, which is find the Blackstone and figure out what to do with it, and you have sub-searches that you have to complete. There are people that may give you something you need in order to acquire the Blackstone, but some people will ask you to bring them something or do something for them before they give you that thing. So you have sub-searches and sometimes sub-sub-searches. So you resolve all of these little adventures, and then they all come together until you have all that you need to complete the main adventure. And in a certain way, you have a sort of like open world feel to it. You have the map, so you have a good sense at a glance of more or less where the adventure is going to take place, what the locations on the map are. Sometimes people tell you, oh, there is such a thing in the northeast or in the southwest. So you just move around, and sometimes you really pick up something in one spot of the map, you bring it to that side of the map, and people tell you, I need something else, and then you just go back and forth. I would say that the adventure has not much of a unidirectional sense, not much of a main narrative construction. You really have the sense that you can just travel around, which is something that has, of course, pluses and minuses. It really depends on you. If you're playing with the sense of what would happen if I were in a world in which I can just explore in any direction, that may mean that I may waste time, I may go in places that I do not need, I may end up going to the same places a lot of times like I would have in a real world in which I just had to go from space to space, then, well, this is perfect, of course. There is that sense of adventure. Of course, there are also adventures that have more of a direction, and of course here I'm comparing this to Gates to the Underworld, the only other full adventure they play by Dark City Games. In that adventure, you have an initial part that takes place in a mountain areas in which you have to collect the first clues to resolve the mission, to complete the mission, and then you reach the Underworld, which is sort of like level 2. Things are more dangerous, more complex there, and this is where the clues that you collected before pay off. So you really have more of a sense of a narrative construction that, of course, has choices. Otherwise, this wouldn't be an interactive experience. But still, those choices go in a main direction. here. More freedom, but also less of a sense of a construction of the story. Again, it is something that I'm not describing as a negative thing per se. I'm just describing the feel that the game gives me, so that you can figure out whether or not this is a game for you. The fights in the game are interesting. There are a lot of different fights, different enemies that will fight in different ways. There is a very interesting battle with literally a horde of opponents, in which the problem in fact is going to figure out how to survive when you are heavily outnumbered. And then a lot of other different fights. I have to say, I kind of like found a common thread, a common feel in these fights, which is the enemies in this adventure seem to be heavily armored. That means that they can absorb a lot of damage. You have to hit them many times before you can defeat them. But at the same time, the heavy armor reduces their dexterity, so they also hit you less often. So the fights seem to me to take longer to resolve than the fights in Gates to the Underworld did, in which you had enemies that were often not as armored but very brutal when attacking you. So usually fights were a matter of few brutal, powerful, violent blows on which you were pretty much gambling everything. So these battles take longer. They attack you but they don't hit you. You hit them but you don't do much damage. And I think that actually this makes this adventure maybe more approachable for beginners that want to start playing the system, because this adventure is more forgiving. The enemies are still tough, but if you make a mistake, since the battle lasts longer and the opponent's not gonna hit you immediately after you make your mistake, maybe you have time to rethink your strategy and come up with a different tactical situation that will help you resolve, come out of the fight. In conclusion, this is to me a good adventure. It is an adventure that has a nice thematic feel to it, dark but not too dark, so the adventure I think is still suitable for young players. If you're going to play it with some, with your young kids, this is definitely an adventure that is less dark and less thematically problematic than Gates to the Underworld. It is an adventure with a lot of interesting situations, a lot of stuff is going to happen, an adventure that really provided me with several hours of solid entertainment. So I think that if you're looking for a good fantasy adventure type of experience to play solo or to play as an RPG with your group, this would be a good choice.